Three position battles to keep an eye on for the fall. Plus, are Gophers fans overlooking Nebraska?
Hey,
You are Locked On Golden Gophers.
No matter what we're going to do here, we're just going to keep rowing.
Your daily podcast on the Minnesota Golden Gophers.
However it turns out, we're just going to keep rowing.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
We're just going to keep rowing, and keep rowing.
You're listening to Locked On Golden Gophers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name's Kane Rob, host of the podcast, former collegiate video coordinator and recruiting assistant. Wow, I can't even remember what my own titles were back in the day. But I'm here to talk Golden Gophers with you, and we're talking a whole lot of football as the football season approaches. I mean, it's going to be here before you know it here in August. We're just crossing over into July tomorrow, but we had to make sure to get another show going for you today. So be sure to follow the podcast wherever you find them on audio platforms at Locked On Golden Gophers, and head on over to YouTube if you want a visual graphic, if you want the topics broken down for you where you can visually see it, plus to chime in with the community in the comment sections below. You can find us at Locked On Golden Gophers and be sure to subscribe over there. Now, today we're talking about three battles to keep an eye on for the fall camp, three position battles. Then we're going to talk about, are the Gophers fans overlooking Nebraska in game one? And then we're going to wrap this one up with intangibles that I believe give me belief in the Gophers moving forward with this difficult season, this difficult schedule ahead. So let's dive right in. Three camp battles right away, off the cuff. The first camp battle, the position battle that has my interest, is the left guard position. Now, there's two names to really keep an eye on here, but maybe a dark horse candidate in the back as well. Now, at the left guard, you're talking about the O-line in general. Our left tackle is pretty much locked in for this year in Ariante Ursery. He was the left tackle last year, and he'll probably be the left tackle next year as well. But he is locked in there. Right guard seems to be locked in with Quinn Carroll, and then right tackle is another battle in itself. It could have made this list, but I'm going with left tackle here because center, assuming it is going to be Nathan Bowe, that is my assumption right now, then I think Carter Shaw looks like he'll probably be the likely fill here. But if you paid attention throughout all the news throughout spring ball and spring practices and whatnot, Tyler Cooper put his name into this conversation, played with the ones on and off with a decent amount of frequency, and I think he can make a solid case for himself with the ones and getting ones reps in this fall camp as well, and making it more of a battle than what some might have anticipated. Now, also, pending the work put in this summer, pending understanding of the playbook and the concepts and how much he puts in the extra time, the extra effort, the extra time in the weight room and all of that, I think a dark horse candidate at the left guard position could still be Greg Johnson. Now, I wouldn't be shocked to see him at least get his name and get some recognition into the conversation. Maybe steal a couple ones reps here and there, but I don't know if he'll be able to take the job outright. But I honestly expect him to be a lot more with the twos. Maybe him and Tyler Cooper, if Carter Shaw wins out, him and Tyler Cooper are battling more for the twos reps. We'll see what happens with all of that. But I really believe Greg Johnson will find a way to make his name into the two deep, which are the guys that travel regardless because of injuries and whatnot. You have them ready. They're practicing like they're going to have the opportunity to play or be the next man up if called upon. I think Greg Johnson can put his name into that conversation. So I think it will be a very interesting battle to watch, to not only get a feel for Carter Shaw versus Tyler Cooper and who could take on that starting spot, but then maybe to see the future of the position. Maybe Greg Johnson can put his name into that conversation and really assert that he is going to be here and be right there at the top of the list when it comes to 2024. Now, the second camp battle, position battle that I am looking at for this fall is probably the biggest camp battle, the one that everybody's talking about, and that is outside cornerback. Now, you know Justin Wally is on one side, but who will be playing opposite of him? The past few years, it's been Terrell Smith, and then when he is injured, has been injured, we've had some different bodies in there. But overall, we need a new opposite. We need a new Robin to Wally's Batman. So outside cornerback, who could be out there? There are a lot of candidates. You've got Tre'Von Jones, you've got Tyler Bride, both of those guys coming from the transfer portal after the spring sessions concluded. You've got Tariq Watson, you've got Rylan Kelly, both of those guys getting a vast majority of the snaps, the looks, the touches in spring camp with a very, very small room. So having a lot of experience working directly with Coach Nick Monroe throughout the entire spring, that kind of gives them a foot up in this type of race. And then you got Zaquan Bryant and maybe even Will McDonald. I don't know if he has been given a waiver to play right away or not. Plus, he looks to be more of the nickel corner build, and that's kind of what he's played in his history so far with Auburn and his schools prior. So what could it all look like here? Maybe you see Will McDonald get some snaps outside as well because the talent is there and you want to get as much usage as you can, knowing Jack Henderson is also going to play in the nickel position. I don't know. There's a lot of bodies in this room. There's a lot of potential that we haven't even been able to see because they weren't here for spring camp. So this is probably the top battle to watch when it comes to, or the top battle under watch when it comes to the coaches, when it comes to media, and when it comes to the fans, is figuring out who are the cornerbacks that are getting the most reps in this next season, because it was a position of concern heading out of the spring, and it's going to be a position of focus as we get into the season, going against a lot of passing teams this season. Now, if I had to make an early call, I still believe that this role has some sort of rotation work in it. Now, last year, Terrell Smith dominated the snaps, but Beanie Bishop still got some healthy work on the outside and in the nickel positions. Ryan Stapp got some work on the outside and in the nickel positions. So there are going to be more than one guy playing in that outside role, but how are those snaps divided? How many snaps are each of these players going to have? Now, my gut says that Bride or Jones will probably see the most or the vast majority of those outside snaps if they can catch on quickly, because the coaches saw something in them. The coaches have had a lot of history here at Minnesota over these last few years of finding really strong production and strong contributors through the transfer portal. They might not go all out. They might not get all the big names that you hear about from all these other Power 5 programs that enter the portal, the ones that get all the media hype and the noise. But what they do is get out there and find the right fits for their system, the right guys for their culture, and they end up producing a lot. Even at the cornerback position, you look to Benjamin St-Juste, who found a nice home here in Minnesota, found nice opportunities, and ended up becoming an NFL draft pick. Now, there's other guys from the transfer portal that have gone on to find the success as well, like Jack Gibbons and many others. But what does that look like here? We brought in 2 cornerbacks. I'm thinking we'll probably see some usage from them. Jones only has 1 year of eligibility left. I believe Bride has 2. So I would not be surprised to see both of them get a shot, get heavy snaps, maybe the snaps of Terrell Smith split between those 2. But I also think you're going to see Tariq Watson, Zaquan Bryant, or Rylan Kelly step up and get some rotation in there as well. Now, will it be all 3 of them? Most likely not. There could be 1 or 2 of them that are looking more for opportunities next season, but it all comes down to how it clicks this fall, how it works out, who's scrapping, who's putting it all together, who's in the right positions, who's making the little details matter. That is who's going to come on top in this battle. So my gut says overall, Bride Jones might take a larger majority of the snaps available, but I do believe Watson, Bryan, or Kelly will find a way to rotate in depending on the game plan, depending on the matchups, depending on if it's more speed needed or more size needed. Now, who exactly will have to be decided and earned in camp, and that is something I truly look forward to. But the last camp battle we want to talk about here at Locked On Golden Gophers is the safety position across from Tyler Nubik. Now, this one seems more solid with Darius Green likely to start and slide in across from him and play a lot of those snaps, but it is hard to imagine that Coleman Bryson, the MVP of the bowl game won't find his way into the conversation. You're talking about he was a difference maker in that bowl game and helped the Gophers come out with a victory in it, but also showed a lot of flashes in the spring ball. He got a lot of amp up, a lot of hype from Coach Fleck himself in fall camp last year. Look, the talent is there. The IQ seems to be there as well. So yes, he could maybe patiently wait in the wings another year for Newbin to go pro and then be able to be a starter from there. But I truly believe in this man and his talent, and it's going to find some way on the field, some way, somehow, in some capacity. So I expect Coleman Bryson to get his name in there and to find a way to get on the field. And I think we're going to see him somehow in this season. So I will be interested in that battle. Now, it might not be a battle for the starting position, but it might be a battle for more splitting opportunities. Now, what we need to talk about next is something very important because the season will be here before we know it, and that is the Nebraska game. Now, when you hear about folks talking about this upcoming season, you hear about the worries of North Carolina, Michigan, Ohio State, our rivals in Wisconsin and Iowa. That's 5 games of focus that the Gophers often talk about. Every once in a while, you hear about Illinois because Brett Bielema has given some issues to the Gophers over these last couple of years. But you don't hear a whole lot about Nebraska. So we're going to talk about our Gophers fans overlooking Nebraska this upcoming season in Game 1. That's coming up next. First, we're going to talk to you about our friends over at FanDuel Sportsbook. Now, speaking of Nebraska, the odds for that game are shrinking. Now, let me pull them up here at FanDuel.com. If you look over there, at FanDuel, you will see that the odds of that game right now are at 7.5 in favor of the Gophers. So the Gophers are favored by just over a touchdown. And that's not bad at all. But it used to be 10 points. It used to be 9 points. And now we're down to 7.5 points. That gap is shrinking. So if you want to take a swing over at FanDuel and get up to potentially 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets, then all you need to do is head on over to Locked On or FanDuel.com/Locked On. If you do that, you can get up to 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets, up to $200. That's right. You just bet $20 and you can land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. You don't have to lose the bet to get those bonus bets. So you definitely should go on over to the FanDuel app. It's a safe app, it's secure, it's super easy to use, and you get paid instantly. Head on over to FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get that deal. All right, Gophers fans, thank you so much for listening to Locked On Golden Gophers and making us your first listen when it comes to Gophers Daily Sports. And a shout out to the everydayers out there who are at it, listening to each and every one of these episodes. Now, once we get to the end week of July, we're going to be back at it 5 days a week. And we've got some great conversations we're going to talk about in that time. So make sure you're getting more locked in as we get closer to the season. We're going to do a position group breakdown. Each episode is going to be dedicated to a position group: the quarterbacks, the running backs, the wide receivers, the offensive linemen, the tight ends, the D-line, we might even split it up into inside D-line or interior D-line and edge rushers. Then we got the linebackers, safeties, cornerbacks, a deep brief on all of them, what the position battles could be, the depth chart potential, the young guys on the roster, the players who are developing, and then where they rank within the Big Ten. You're going to want to have all that info. We're going to want to talk about it down in the comments below. So be sure to subscribe over on YouTube so you do not miss any of that. Now let's talk about the topic at hand, and that is, are the Gophers fans overlooking Nebraska in Game 1? Now, yes, Matt Rhule has turned programs around in 2 to 3 years in his history as a head coach in the collegiate level. Yes, he has also had very poor year ones in both of those occasions. But this is not the same launching point at all. So with Temple, you look at his time there, he started out as 2-10, then went 6-6, and then knocked out 2 10-win seasons back-to-back and being the first place team in the AAC. Then he moved over to his time in Baylor, which followed those 4 years, where he went 1-11, 7-6, and then 11-3, which was second in the Big 12 at that time. Now, when you look at it, he hasn't really stayed long enough to prove consistency or drop off, but I don't think he'll be leaving Nebraska anytime soon, barring his alma mater of Penn State. Maybe if they come calling because they're just past the Franklin experience, then maybe he would take that offer. But outside of that, I think he's pretty locked in when it comes to Nebraska. So you talk about the biggest differences from his time at Temple, his time at Baylor, and now his time at Nebraska. I think that is where the problem lies, because I think right now everyone's just counting it as an automatic win. It might not be a close game. The Gophers are winning. They're going to be, if they can beat North Carolina, they could be 5-0 into the Michigan game. I've been there as well. I've had that thought process too. But you can't look past this Nebraska team because they have a capable coach who's shown that he can put things together at other programs. They have some expertise, new coaching coming through. They've got the talent that wants to be there. Their recruiting looks nice, typically in each of their classes, but they have the fan base, the hype, the NIL structure to make it a good program at Nebraska. We've seen them have some success in the past. Now that success is looking like it's further and further away after these last few 5-6 years of Nebraska football. But the reason and the biggest difference that this isn't the same starting point as the others is because of three things. The fan base, which is one of the most loyal fan bases I've seen, the best traveled fan bases I've seen, the craziest fan bases I've seen out there, some really annoying fans over there on the Twitter sphere, but their loyalty knows no bounds. They will be patient with the proven success he has had in his past, and they will be 100% supportive. You can bet that. You can take it to the bank. It's going to happen. So the fan base is going to be there to lift him up and help give that roster, that talent, those home games, give them the swagger to be in any game at any given point. But another thing is the current talent on the roster. Now, Nebraska has always had some good talent, but they don't always get the best of it. Well, new coaching staff can change that up completely. But then on top of that, they bring in 12 transfers in this upcoming season, all coming from Power 5 schools. 7 of those coming from the SEC, and 3 of them coming from back-to-back champions in Georgia. Now, obviously, they couldn't get much time on the field in those spots, which is why they're looking for a new opportunity. But you know the talent's at hand. You know, especially Georgia gets dogs. Like, they've got the guys, the bodies, the talent to show out. They've got the depth, and that's why some of these guys get buried, because they have so much top talent that comes through that even top talent gets buried. So the fact that they have those guys transferring in, ready to be a part of it, ready to come into this thing full swing and make a difference, it could be a jumping off point for Nebraska, which isn't the same as his time in Temple. People weren't rushing into the door to play for the Temple Owls in his time there. So yes, it took some struggle while he got through his recruiting classes and built up the athletes he needed for his system. Now, Baylor was a little bit different being in the Big 12, but still Baylor wasn't a juggernaut of sorts prior to Matt Rhule's time with them. Now, they did have some success, more success than Temple, but there still was a gap between him and some of that success. I believe it was like 1 to 2 years where things were just really going awry. So there is a difference, because this Nebraska team, although they haven't made a bowl game in quite some time, they've still found the way to get top talent to come there, to keep recruits in state. And he has just been elevating that, which is another factor of why I don't believe this is the same. Because if you look at this recruiting class of 2024, Matt Rhule has been going real nice in this. You're seeing the uptick in the recruiting right now. Their 2024 class has 4 4-star players, and it's ranked in the top 16 in the nation. I believe currently right now they're in that 11 to 13 zone. So I'm just going with top 16 because Nebraska hasn't finished in the top 16 as a recruiting class since 2011. Now, I know we're still early in recruiting, but they truly could finish up there. So you're talking about everything is kind of looking like it is a lot different. Now, maybe not a lot different for Nebraska, but a lot different from what Matt Rhule had in his first few seasons at Temple and at Baylor. So that is why I don't think the Gophers fans should be overlooking Nebraska heading into this upcoming season. Now, Are the coaches and players overlooking them? I don't think so. They don't tend to ever do that. And that is a good factor that we're going to talk about here in just a minute. But fans and maybe even some media, I think we might be looking a little bit too much past Nebraska and need to focus more on that game and how it could be a close fight even in week 1. The fact is, I think we're all slightly overlooking Nebraska, but luckily it is game 1 of the season where all the kinks are still getting worked out, especially with a fully new coaching staff and a fully new leader at the helm and new quarterback and new wide receivers that are stepping up in major positions for them. That should play in the Gophers' favor, especially with the game being at home at Huntington Bank Stadium. But that said, the Gophers need to start off well, and they need to start off like a well-oiled machine and making sure there's no hiccups, no miscommunications, because a loss in week 1 with one of the most difficult schedules in the entire nation doesn't bode well. So don't overlook Nebraska. I want that to be known and heard from us here at Locked On Golden Gophers very early. But the final thing we're going to talk about on this show today is the specific intangibles that make me believe the Gophers still can overcome the challenge of a very difficult schedule. We're going to talk about that to close this show coming up next. All right, Gopher fans, there's a handful of things that the Gophers have that are intangible that I truly believe that this roster can make some noise with the tough schedule. And there are 3 things of focus that I want to talk about. The first is the chemistry between the chemistry in general, between the coaches, coach to coach, between coaches and players, and then players to players, and even the staff, the communication staff, and all of that within the program. Everything seems to be clicking, to be gelling, to be interacting in a fun manner. I mean, everything just feels like it fits. It feels like they are having such a strong bond that they can power through whatever adversity comes their way. And that also means that through disbelief, through a tough schedule and all that, that they believe in each other and that they can do whatever is in front of them. Now, you could say that about maybe any program. You're like, oh, well, anybody has. No, that's not the same as what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the fact that Swag Daddy and Coach Debo are out here throwing gifts back and forth, talking about building up their room, talking about being partners in crime and all that during the recruiting season. You don't see that from other coaches. You don't see that playing of sorts, that gelling off each other, vibing off each other, the chemistry in the defense as a whole. Even Joe Rossi getting in on the gift games on Twitter. Look, they're building something special, something intangible that people just want to be around. And you're feeling that with the recruiting class as well, with so many defensive players coming through, committing and being like, look, this culture, this thing they've got building, I want to be a part. I want to be in this dojo. I want to be in this cornerback room. I want to be a part of it all. We're building something. And you feel that from the chemistry, not only from coaches to coaches like we talked about, but the coaches to players. And the players fending for what you're going to learn here, what they're going to ask of you, what it is like to be a Gophers football player. They're straight up with them. They tell them it's not fake. It's not a shtick, because you only can get away with that for a month or 2 before they realize what the truth is. And then they're just going to transfer out at this point. So you got to be the real. You got to be the honest. And that's what these players are doing when they host these students and the recruits. And then finally, from players to players, you see these guys in interviews and pressers and all of that talking about, look, this is a brotherhood. This is something I want to go to battle with these guys all the time. I want to do this thing. I know Ethan Caligmanis is different from Tanner Morgan, and here's their differences, but they learn from each other in this manner. And Ethan will take this from Tanner because, look, the chemistry, it is there. And that is intangible number 1 of why the Gophers can get through such a tough schedule. Number 2 is the culture, and the internal message is stronger than the outside noise. No matter how much we speculate, no matter how much we talk about, oh, there's a battle, or, oh, this guy, he's younger and he might want his time before, otherwise he's going to want to transfer, or the transfer portal is huge and maybe these guys are considering it. No, they keep it inside. They keep it internal. They talk about what they need to talk about. They say, this is our focus. This is our mission. This is our culture. This is who we are. This is what we stand for. You're going to hear differently. You're going to hear that I'm a salesperson. You're going to hear that I don't care about you, but you know what it is on this inside. You know that I don't care if you go on to be a pro or if you go on to be the best human being possible. I want to arm you and help you become everything you want to be and more. And that's what we do here. We take care of each other. We fight for each other. We are all one unit. We are playing at an elite level. We do things how we do them, not how others perceive we do them. And that is huge. And it is going to be one of the main factors in how they can overcome a tough schedule, is keeping the outside noise out. If they come into the season and have 5-0 and head into this Michigan game, keeping the outside noise out of, oh, maybe this Gopher program is overlooked, and keeping the hype down, staying humble. All of that is going to play into itself here in the season. So those two factors, chemistry and the culture and internal message, being stronger than the outside noise. And the final thing is the week by week mentality. Now, while you and I discuss the key games on the season, the trap games, the hardest games, and etc., Minnesota is focused on improving themselves this offseason, getting up to speed, getting like a well-oiled machine, getting the self-scout and finding their own flaws. And then all the focus turns to Nebraska. Not further than Nebraska, just Nebraska. Now, what they do internally when they're set to move their scout over is they'll break down everything. They'll break down Nebraska's OC's previous stops prior to coming to Nebraska. They'll break down Matt Rhule's previous stops. They're going to look at the Temple tape. They're going to look at the Baylor tape. They're going to look at the Carolina Panthers tape. This coaching staff is really going to dive into the weeds with so many changes coming through from the Nebraska program. Same for defense. They're going to go to the defensive coordinator and where his stops have been. But luckily, Minnesota's bowl game was prep for the new Nebraska defensive coordinator who came from Syracuse. So we've already kind of got a jump start on that one. Now, you'll go back and you'll self-scout that bowl game and where you could have maybe found some more openings, where they could have picked you apart, and you're going to address those things early so you don't get exposed in that first game. But that is what I'm talking about. Every motion, every formation, blocking concepts from the old line coach, they're going to flag all that. They're going to note all that. They're going to break it down and how they can expose any advantage possible. Tape on Jeff Sims. They're going to look at what he did with Georgia Tech, what his strengths were, where his struggles were, what defenses, what changes in the picture presented issues for Jeff Sims. They're going to do whatever they can to get him confused, and also look at where did he thrive? Where did he hit the long plays? Where were his explosive coming from? How did he get open in the running game? They're going to look at it all. All of that and more has already been broken down and is being broken down. All of the gathering of films from all the opponents that they've played in the last few years, and their new staff is collected, it's entered, it's charted, it's reported, and then reports are run. And that is just the preliminary work that is going to happen. And then you get into the week of, and that's where things go full hyperdrive. That's where you really get into the nitty-gritty details of the work. And that is happening for all opponents here in the summer, is all that charting, all that reporting, all that gathering of film. All of that is happening then. And then you get the new current games as they come in each and every week, and the hyperdrive each week of focus. Now, how do I know all this? It's because I did that job. I was that guy. I was the video coordinator for a D2 program. Organizing all that film used to be my job at the Division II level. And at Division I, it just happens at an even more rapid pace. So I can tell you for a fact they will be prepared. But it's also why I believe that the three intangibles will allow the Gophers to find success, because once they hit Nebraska focus, they're not looking past them. They're trying to expose every flaw imaginable with Cornhuskers in the week one, or the championship 1 week game against Nebraska, as PJ Fleck always likes to go to. So that's going to do it for us here at Locked On Golden Gophers. I appreciate you listening. I'm going to drop another show tonight or tomorrow, so definitely be sure to tap in. We're going to talk about the sports that we haven't really talked about here on the podcast. So we usually talk about football, men's and women's basketball, and Gophers hockey, but let's talk about the success this past year of all the other sports. If you want to know how the other Gophers programs have done, you're going to want to be sure to tap in. This is Kane Rob signing off. Row the boat, Sky Go Gophers, and don't forget to subscribe.